Lover boy Nathan Wade is missing. The House Judiciary Committee, which is investigating Georgia DA Fani Willis, needs Wade to testify at a hearing tomorrow on their love affair. But no one can find the guy. They're trying to serve him, but he's flown the coop, and now the U.S. Marshals are in a manhunt to track him down. Have they checked the conduct?
I'm asking you to go through 1,000 pages of records. I'm asking if you remember paying for a cabin 6 months ago in Tennessee.
No.
You remember booking a cabin?
I booked lots of cabins.
Did you go to a cabin with Miss Willis ever?
Ever?
Ever.
No.
You've never gone to a cabin with Miss Willis?
No.
Have you ever gone to Tennessee with Miss Willis?
Yes.
Okay. When was that?
That was around 2022.
My fellow New Yorkers, it is now my belief that the federal government intends to charge me with crimes. If so, these charges will be entirely false, based on lies. But they would not be surprising. I always knew that if I stood my ground for all of you, that I would be a target, and a target I became. For months, leaks and rumors have been aimed at me in an attempt to undermine my credibility and paint me as guilty. Just this past week, they searched the home of our new police commissioner, looking for documents from 20 years ago, just 1 week after he joined my administration. Enough. I will fight these injustices with every ounce of my strength and my spirit.
Is it fair to say you'd rather spend 189 years in prison than to testify against any one of your friends?
As I had got older, yes.
Okay.
Your Honor, she said, did I do any searches? I do not understand the question.
Wait, you're going to ask her to clarify?
May you clarify the question?
Did you do any searches in regards to the issues in this lawsuit?
I cannot answer that question. Why? Because I thought your lawsuit was frivolous. And I'm using your terms, Your Honor, so forgive me. It did not merit any work for me because of who you are and what you alleged. So I sent it over to the Fulton County for representation.
There's nothing more powerful than the odor of mendacity.
All right, welcome back Inside the Law, everyone. I'm your host, Philip Holloway. I'm very excited about our show today because we've got a lot to talk about. And before I get into that, I want to just say thanks to all of you for spending part of your Friday afternoon with us here Inside the Law. This, of course, being our YouTube channel where we take you inside the real justice system, the real legal system. We show you what it's really like on the inside, and we do that in the context of these cases that are in the news every day. And of course, I'm in Atlanta. We've got a lot going on here in Fulton County, but there's also other things going on elsewhere in the world that are very interesting legal topics. And we're going to get into some of those today, as you have seen from the videos that we just played here at the very beginning. We've got to talk about Nathan Wade and of course, Fani Willis, and we've got to talk about Ashley Merchant and her open records lawsuit. We've got to talk about the update in the Fani Willis versus Young Thug YSL trial. And of course, the big breaking news from this week is the sitting mayor of New York City has been indicted for public corruption. And, you know, who else would be better to help us break all this down than a couple of people that are friends of mine and friends of yours and friends of the show. Let's give a big welcome inside the law. Welcome to our friends and my colleagues, Rachel Kaufman, the current founder and president of the Miss Love fan club, and of course the secretary and I guess record keeper and treasurer of the Love fan club, Mr. YSL Doug Weinstein. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, Phil. Great to be here.
All right. So, Rachel, you are on the West Coast. Doug and I are both here in Atlanta. Let's take just a minute and talk about we've had a hurricane and tropical storm that has impacted, and unfortunately some people have lost their lives in the Southeast Florida and in Georgia. And I want to just say to everybody who may be watching this, I hope that every one of you who may have been in that zone of danger has come through it okay, like we have been. I've been very lucky here in the metro Atlanta area, but a lot of people have not. So I wanted to just take a minute to recognize those folks and wish everybody the very best as they recover from this storm. Rachel, let's start with you. You got any news that you want to talk about, or which one of these topics? You can take your pick. Which one should we start with today? Should we start with Nathan or just what?
I kind of want to start with Ashley Merchant and Dexter, the gentleman who continued to repeat that he didn't feel that he needed to read the lawsuit against him because he assumed it was frivolous and was playing games, answering questions when all they have to do is be transparent. But he works for, the Fulton County DA's office, so it's to be expected. I think that's probably a good segue into what Nathan Wade's attempting to do as well. Yeah.
So what Rachel's talking about, for those of you who might be new here or not familiar, there's a lawyer that you may have heard of. Her name is Ashley Merchant. She is the person you saw questioning Nathan Wade there in one of those clips. And she's the Aaron Brockovich, I like to say, of uncovering all of the shenanigans at the district attorney's office in Fulton County. And she was stymied in her efforts through the criminal discovery process from getting a lot of the records pertaining to how Mr. Wade came to be a contractor of the DA's office and other things. And so she's filed a lawsuit, and let's just say the district attorney is not cooperating. Doug, what is going on with her lawsuit, Doug? Have you been able to follow it along with everything else that you've got going?
Well, I followed some of it. I mean, she made the open records request, which any citizen can make under the Georgia law. And when they were non-responsive to that, she really had no choice but to file a lawsuit seeking those records. And you can see the flippant attitude of the DA's office, the "we are responsible to no one" attitude of the DA's office. And it's not exhibited in any more clear fashion than watching Dexter Montgomery on the stand when that lawsuit proceeded, or Fani Willis's attitude that she doesn't have to respond to subpoenas. So the DA's office clearly believes they're above the law, at least under the current district attorney. And it's a shame to see.
Rachel, the clip we showed was the witness on the stand was Dexter Bond, and as I understand it,
Dexter Bond. Thank you.
Yeah, he's the open records guy, for lack of a better way, but he's also an assistant district attorney, and he's got some other title, I think maybe director of operations or something. They got a lot of people at the DA's office that have a lot of fancy titles. They're big into those things at the Fulton DA's office. But Bond clearly, and that was just one little snippet. There was a whole like a whole day or something. His testimony was absolutely just. It was just terrible to watch it. I mean, he's combative. He wouldn't answer her questions. If he's the kind of guy you ask him if the sky is blue, and he's not gonna answer the question, right? But what comes next, Rachel? What's coming next in that lawsuit?
Well, I think the judge is going to eventually have to somehow compel him. Compel him to produce these records. The issue is that Ashley Merchant, the Merchant law firm, they've gone above and beyond to attempt to secure records that should be accessible to the public. And it seems as though Fulton County, the DA, the records custodian for the DA's office are trying to play games about, who's been served, who the records were requested from. In the clip that we saw, Ashley Merchant was simply asking him if he had done a search for the documents that she had requested, which became the subject of this lawsuit. The lawsuit's not for money. The lawsuit's for basically like an injunction to make sure that they could actually get the actual document. She's not seeking anything other than the transparency of a public office. And I believe specifically she's trying to find out how much money their office spent using public tax dollars on, I guess, like media optimization of the Trump prosecution. So it's just getting bizarre. And I don't know, unfortunately, it's actually spilling over into not just the Fulton County DA's office, but the Fulton County attorney. And they're the ones that seem to be calling the shots here as it relates to how much Dexter Bond is saying and not saying. But he was giving, they'd ask him, have you done these searches? And he would say no, but then he'd say yes, just not because you filed the lawsuit, because I didn't read the lawsuit because I think it's frivolous. Well, how do you know if it's frivolous if you didn't read it? Genius.
That's exactly right.
Well, Doug, I was going to ask you, Doug, when you have a witness that's on the stand, and of course there's no jury there, this is not a jury trial, but it is a trial, right? The judge is sitting as what we call the trier of fact, which if there were a jury, the jury would be the trier of fact, but the judge is also the trier of law, right? Or the judge of the law and the facts. So when you have a witness like that in this trial setting, and let's just say you're Ashley and they're acting that belligerent, what as a lawyer are you supposed to do?
Let me tell you, when I was viewing, and I watched some of that, I'm embarrassed to say I watched some of that live while it was going on in the corner of my screen, of course, just out the corner of my eye. And when I'm watching that, my first thought was, I see that type of behavior in depositions, right? And it looked like a deposition video. And my thought as a civil litigator was, this is just a dream depo. And thank God I brought a videographer to record it, because I'm going to want to play this in court, because it just shows the nature of the opponent I'm dealing with and how they are not taking their legal obligations with any degree of seriousness. And I can't wait to play this before the trier of fact. And then I have to bring myself back and think, oh my, I don't need to do that. This is taking place in the actual hearing. And it's astounding. So one of my thoughts is, and of course, was this witness not properly prepped? Or is this just a case where you have a witness that is impossible to prep? Just the worst 30B6 type witness ever. And so I don't always blame the lawyers, but then I think, are these the same lawyers that drafted that piece of crap motion to recuse?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, well,
yes, they are. And so I think he was prepped. I just think that the people that are prepping him are giving him horrible advice and making a mockery of the entire idea that there should be transparency from public officials as it relates to how they're spending money. I don't understand. What are they so scared of?
And one of the things I wanted to raise when you said it, Rachel, and this is twice you said it, that transparency that they should have, to me, it's even more than that, because there's a law out there, right? There's a law that requires this transparency, that the DA's office thinks that if they, on their own, decide that the request or eventual lawsuit has no merit, then they don't need to take the actions required of them under the law. Just the attitude of that office is astounding.
It is astounding.
The attitude to the office. So that's, so when he said, Dexter Bond, now when he says to Ashley, and by the way, I don't think he's capable of being, you can't prep a witness like that, because the way he comes across to me, if I'm the judge and I'm sitting as the trier of fact, I'm really going to not believe or give a whole lot of weight, if any, to his testimony, because he comes across as being arrogant and thinking he's the smartest lawyer in the room and he knows better than anything. But when he says he expressed an actual bias when he says he found that the lawsuit to be frivolous because he said to Ashley, because of who you are, right? Which shows that's a little glimmer into the attitude of this DA's office. They hate her. They absolutely hate Ashley. They hate what she has done. Look, they're very embarrassed. And they should be embarrassed because of what they've done, not because of what Ashley's done. Ashley's being a zealous advocate for her client. She wasn't able to get the material through the criminal discovery process, so she went another route to try to get it, which was the open records, and didn't get it. They're still stonewalling her, so they're breaking that law, in my opinion. But they're saying that they find this frivolous because of who Ashley is. And so I would just not give his testimony one bit of weight.
Yeah.
No, as the records custodian for the district attorney's office, he has a duty to look at open records requests that are submitted to that office and determine whether they have any documents or records that are relevant to that request. It's not that difficult. His answer to the question of whether he did searches in relation to the subject matter of the lawsuit should have been simply yes. If he's not doing it, who's doing it? And somebody needs to be doing it because there's a law in place, as Doug mentioned, that says that we have the right to certain open records. I don't understand if he's not searching it and he's the records custodian for their office, where are these records? Then he started talking about how, that he didn't I also watched the testimony that there were questions about whether he actually spoke to Fani Willis about the nature of these records, and he was being incredibly cagey, which just makes it all so clear that he has, and that they're purposely, trying to hide documents. Another thing is at play is that when you're under oath, I mean, you could be subjected to perjury charges, and I don't understand. I mean, there's got to be some kind of paper trail in that office of who's searching for what, when, and where these records went. That'll be very interesting as we go forward. But he was under oath, so
and he may have thought he was being cagey, but in my view, while watching it, it was like Ashley Merchant was like a cat batting around a little mouse, a little plaything, because there's no competition between Mr. Bond and Ashley Merchant. And so
every time. So yeah.
All right. Fun. Well, there's more to this hearing. They didn't get finished. There's more coming up. I think I forget when it is. Somebody in the chat will surely remind us. I think it's coming up very soon.
Next week.
Yeah, maybe next week. So they've got to get to the finish line of the testimony and then see how the judge is going to rule. But look, I think that regardless of the position that they take through their witnesses like that, I think that Ashley is going to come out on top. She's going to win this lawsuit. And so whether or not that means that they're going to appeal or are they going to comply with the records request, I don't know. My guess is they probably would appeal. But so I want to move on to our next topic. And for those of you who may not have been in here live at the very, very beginning, let's take a look at this real quick.
Lover boy Nathan Wade is missing. The House Judiciary Committee, which is investigating Georgia DA Fani Willis, needs Wade to testify at a hearing tomorrow on their love affair. But no one can find the guy. They're trying to serve him, but he's flown the coop, and now the U.S. Marshals are in a manhunt to track him down. Have they checked the conduct?
All right. So this was something that's come out. This is something, look, in full disclosure, I was aware of this issue brewing before, that news video popped up. And let's just say in all fairness to Nathan Wade, I would not say that there was a manhunt. Okay. A lot of people have been calling it that in social media. They're saying he's missing. There's a warrant for his arrest and all this. It was not a manhunt, but here's what it was. The Congress of the United States, by and through Jim Jordan's committee, has sought to subpoena. They've been wanting to talk to him for a while, and we can go through all of the letter that was sent, but it may not be. I mean, I've posted this whole thing the other night on my Twitter feed as well. But they've been trying to get Nathan for some time to testify. And this, in fact, the cover letter says, after 2 months of communication following our May 9th letter between your counsel and committee staff, your counsel informed the committee on July the 19th that you agreed to appear voluntarily for a transcribed interview. Now, that's not something that's under oath. It's not a deposition. But as the letter points out, they went, there was some back and forth, and they wound up canceling. Apparently, Nathan was at that time represented by, according to footnote number 2, an attorney by the name of Andrew Evans, counsel for Mr. Wade. So they've been talking with his lawyer. Former Governor Roy Barnes is somehow involved in this mix. So it says here, Mr. Barnes represented his client as District Attorney Willis and identified himself as counsel for Fani Willis, District Attorney of Fulton County. Press reports and public accounts indicate that Willis retained Barnes to defend her in the things related to the Georgia Senate. And it goes on and so forth. And it closes, this letter does, it closes by pointing out that the committee is examining your role, that's Wade's role, in what they're saying is the politically motivated prosecution of former President of the United States, and whether federal funds were used for this. And as previously explained, says you have reportedly, quote, profited significantly from District Attorney Willis's prosecution with unsealed court filings showing that you have been paid almost $700,000 from the Fulton County DA's office since May 2022 alone. Willis compensated you and financed her politically motivated prosecution using a mixture of taxpayer funds, possibly including part of the $14.6 million in federal grant funds that her office received from the Department of Justice between 20 and 23. So whether or not, let's setting aside any politics that may be involved, and anytime you've got politicians, whether it's the elected DA or people in Congress, you're going to have some degree of politics. But setting that aside, I think we all can maybe and should agree that Congress in general has an interest in making sure that how, when it gives money, grant money to entities, that they use it the way that it was intended. Mm-hmm. So what we have seen here, back to, that was a long explanation for what happened this week. There was an effort to get him to come voluntarily for a transcribed interview, and that morphed into, a request for a deposition. And according to the letter, it appears that basically they blew off the Congress, and so they had to resort to a subpoena. And then normally, Doug, and I want you to speak to this specifically because of your vast experience in civil cases, it's common that, and this is a civil matter, so it's common that lawyers will accept service and that you don't have to send the sheriff, or in this case, the U.S. Marshal, to hand deliver a subpoena. But in this case, that apparently wasn't happening. Wade clearly didn't want to be subpoenaed, so they had to resort to using the Marshal's office for this, and they've publicly stated that that's the case. And whether or not he was hiding, whether or not he was just simply at a cabin somewhere and didn't know about this, I don't know. And whether the Marshals were diligently looking, I don't know. But suffice it to say, it was not a manhunt, but clearly there was some effort by him to avoid the subpoena. But yesterday afternoon, he presented himself to the Marshals. Contrary to what people say on social media, he didn't surrender. He didn't turn himself in. He presented himself to be hand-delivered this document. So he's now been properly served. So with that explanation, Doug, what does this say to you about, just what's going on here?
Yeah, this is, I'll say typical, but the process that Congress used is very typical for the way that Congress works. And as you say, the way it works in civil litigation, where if I want a third-party witness to appear, or I want documents from a third party, you go through this process where you say, hey, can we avoid a subpoena? Can we just, ask you for this, ask you to do this? Parties will often cooperate. There may be some reasons that they won't. And then sometimes they may say, we will do it, but please give us a subpoena, basically to cover themselves with whoever. But in this case, this is something I guess I've seen a few times where you get a party that appears to be cooperating, right? They act like they're going to cooperate, but what they're really doing, and I think this is what it appears to me looking at it from the outside, is Wade is doing everything that he can to delay this. So he appears to cooperate for a time until Congress gets to the point where, okay, they've had it. It's clear that cooperation isn't happening. Now we got to do a subpoena. At that point, 99 times out of 100, 95 times out of 100, the attorney will accept that subpoena on behalf of his client. That's just professional courtesy. It's the way it works. And then barring that, you have to do some form of service. So I hesitate, and that didn't it didn't happen here where the attorney clearly did not accept service on Wade's behalf. So they had no choice but to go the next step and get it to be served by the marshals in this case, because it's a congressional subpoena. But I hesitate to use the word evade because it carries such legal weight.
Yep.
But let's just say avoid in all caps. He was avoiding in all caps getting the subpoena until the last possible moment and avoiding testifying.
And Rachel, it says here, the very last sentence of this letter, it says, in light of your continued failure to cooperate with our investigation, please find attached a subpoena compelling your testimony before the committee on September 26, 2024. And today, as we are doing this live stream, and if you're watching it on replay, today is the 27th of September. And if he didn't get, and I have confirmed through sources that have direct knowledge of this, that, obviously that didn't happen. And so they're going to have to reschedule that. But this clearly references failure to cooperate with the investigation. Of course, there's no legal requirement that anybody cooperate with anything, but they've had to resort to the last resort of a subpoena, which is what we call compulsory process, Rachel.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, they're having to use more tax dollars to try to secure the presence of Nathan Wade. Just think about how much money that he's blown between the $700,000 plus that he was paid. And then now we're talking about having to get the U.S. Marshals involved for something that, like Doug said, it's just pretty professional courtesy. You just have your attorney, accept service on your behalf. And you just have to wonder, you don't really have to wonder, actually. It's become very clear in the letter that you just posted, but also I think it was admitted that Roy Barnes, who is Fani Willis's attorney, was the one who actually stepped in following Nathan Wade's lawyer claiming that they were going to cooperate with this investigation. He stepped in and somehow advised Nathan Wade and his attorney to I'll say evade. I don't know what's the difference between avoid and evade. He to not cooperate. I mean, to evade and avoid providing any sort of cooperation to this investigation. My biggest issue, again, what are they so afraid of?
Yeah.
If you have nothing to hide as it relates to how you got paid and how the money's being used.
Well, the letter points out that you, meaning Wade, have spoken publicly on several occasions about topics relating to your employment with Fulton County DA. To the best of our knowledge, the Fulton County DA has not objected to your interviews or sought to intervene in those settings. And one could conclude from your statements and the DA's apparent failure to intervene that the DA has waived any potential privilege. Now, so Barnes muddied the water he didn't exactly say attorney-client privilege because that doesn't apply to prosecutors, but he sort of alleged that there's some duty of confidentiality that Wade somehow owes. But that doesn't fly when you compare it to all the interviews he's done.
Yeah, don't forget. I'm sorry, go ahead, Rachel.
No, he's on the Daily Show talking about the positions, and I
mean, he beclowned himself on that show.
Yeah, and I love it. I've just rewatched it with my father the other day in California. I mean, I get the biggest kick out of him thinking this is all for entertainment and fun, and even showing he had the nerve to show up at the arrest of Fani Willis's daughter with Fani Willis after they've allegedly broken up. But the U.S. House of Representatives, he won't accept service from them?
Yeah. I mean, it's very simple. If you receive a subpoena from Congress, then there's no reason to not have your attorney accept service and go do that. Well, there's no reason for because they're going to serve you. Just go ahead and take it. And the other thing to think about, if you're his attorney, he's in a much worse position now than if he would have cooperated at the beginning, right? So Nathan has not served himself well through his lack of cooperation with Congress. What do you think? Congress
should answer questions under oath now versus a transcribed interview.
That's exactly right. And this is a man that I think, just personal opinion, it may not be fact, has perjured himself on the stand. So now he has put himself in a place where he is subject to perjury charges versus, as you say, Phil, just a transcribed interview not under oath.
All right. Well, before we move on to the mayor of New York and his current indictment, I want to take just a second to acknowledge the 2,100 people that are here. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. I'm at 48,900 and some change. I'm knocking on the door of 50,000 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so if you like this content. Also wanted to acknowledge some of the super chats, and we've got one from G, says free Young Thug, and we're going to get to Young Thug in an update on that before we are done. I promise you, we got the perfect guest for that. So JT Doug came for you, and we appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks again Doug, you're very popular. So Melanie, thank you for the sticker. And Melanie had a question also that I wanted to point out. Melanie Snare asked, can the Attorney General bring charges of discrimination or obstruction? And this was, I think, in reference to the lawsuit filed by Ashley Merchant, the Open Records. And the answer is no. This is a civil dispute for good or bad. It's a civil dispute. It's not the kind of thing the Attorney General is going to get involved in. The Open Records law, to my knowledge, has no criminal penalty. So do you guys have a different answer?
No, I agree with you.
And Nick points out that the records actually seeing are in Aruba with Wade, Quez, and Lil Mike. Well, maybe. We shall see. And we're going to get to some of that. So thank you all very much for the super chats. All right. So the mayor of New York was indicted this week. Thursday, what's today? Friday. So it was yesterday that was unsealed, and he's been charged with, and I'm not going to share a copy of it. It's a long, lengthy, sprawling federal indictment, but it charges him basically with being a corrupt politician. They basically said he accepted bribes. A lot of those were in the nature of upgrades and free travel on Turkish Airlines. They essentially said they didn't charge him with being a foreign agent, but they basically accused him of being in bed with representatives of the Turkish government, that he, according to the federal prosecutors, he opened up a building that the fire department had not yet, said passed muster yet due to fire codes or whatever. It was a building that I guess the Turkish government needed to use it for something. And they're saying that the mayor intervened and overrode the Turkish government. The big thing that I thought was the most problematic, and welcome y'all's opinion if it's different, of course. He's accused of using, he's taking money from the Turkish government and funneling it through straw donors, individuals who were not actually donating in their own name, but were donating on behalf of Turkey. And then once he got to a certain level, he qualified for matching funds from the city of New York, which paid him or his campaign a matching amount of $10 million. So their prosecutors are saying that essentially matched money that was foreign money, which is not supposed to have any place in our elections. So anyway, with that, he's entered a plea of not guilty. We don't know what the defenses are. I'm a little bit unimpressed with the bribery aspect of it, because you're going to have to do better with some unexplained upgrades from 2017 on Turkish Airlines. And I'm not all that impressed, to be honest with you, with there could be plenty of reasons why the mayor, look, you got New York, the UN is there, and maybe the mayor did not want to have a diplomatic kerfuffle that might embarrass the city on the world stage. There might have been non-criminal reasons that the mayor could have cut through some red tape on behalf of Turkey. But my mind is open. Hopefully your minds are open. But Rachel, what do you think about this indictment? We'll start with you.
I mean, just as somebody who witnesses politicians do things that concern her regarding corruption, I'm concerned about corruption from most political officials, and it's just kind of picking and choosing who we're going to allow to, which ones we're going to allow to be prosecuted. I have an open mind about this too. I know that there's a lot of people in New York that are very critical of the mayor, but again, I'm not really sure what's going on. I'm not sure what's going on. I don't follow it as closely because it's not local politics for me, but it is a little bit concerning that the feds are going after him. I guess from the perspective of there must be, I fall into the trap that I think a lot of people who are not criminal defense attorneys do when they're dealing with a criminal case, that like there must be some evidence of something. But then again, with political corruption, it's like the pot calling the kettle black.
Well, Doug, they're leaning on, they basically came out at the presser and said, if anybody knows anything, and they're talking to his people that are in the mayor's orbit is who they're speaking to. They're saying basically, you better come forward now before it's too late. So they're basically pressuring people to sing, right? And to either say what they know or maybe to come up with something that's of interest, because they're threatening people in his orbit with indictment. And whether you're guilty or not guilty, that's a very frightening proposition. So what do you make of that kind of pressure that they're putting on his friends and his coworkers and colleagues, Doug?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that they did it in that fashion, because the normal way, as you guys know, to work your way up to someone like a mayor is to start with flipping people lower down the chain, pressuring them earlier on, getting them to flip, and then working your way up until eventually you have your witnesses lined up, you have your statements, you have your evidence, and then you're ready to go after the top dog, who in this case would be the mayor. So I was a little surprised to see him indict the mayor and then say, hey, you other folks in the office. But one thing is, as a daily reader of the Gray Lady, the paper of record for the United States of America, the great and powerful New York Times, the corruption in New York City over the last few years, it's endemic and it's throughout the government. The mayor is not the first one to go down there. They've had the chief of police, then they raided the guy that took that job. I mean, there's been corruption throughout, and not necessarily just the mayor's office, but throughout New York City government. And the mayor's office has been hemorrhaging personnel who have been resigning for quite a while. So there's a significant problem in New York City government. And this is just kind of the last thing. The other thing I wanted to say, Phil, about what you mentioned, I completely agree with you about those aspects of the indictment that I find a bit weak, and I would love to defend those. The one that I think would be the biggest challenge is the straw donors, both for the use of the straw donors and leveraging that to get the $10 million in matching fund. That is really serious. And I'm assuming, since it's the feds that went after him, they are going to have a mountain of evidence.
Well, look, what I think we all know that unlike local prosecutors, a lot of times the feds, they don't really sneak up on you. They kind of usually, you know, if you're being investigated, and by the time they pull the trigger on an indictment, they look, if you cut a plea deal, they can bypass the grand jury. They file something called an information. We would call it an accusation in state practice, and they bypass the grand jury. But if they're going to go the route of a grand jury like this, they're coming. They've already talked to your lawyer, or maybe you. and you might have some sense of what they have, and either negotiations broke down or they never got off to a good start in the first place. But they obviously been working on this for a while. There's allegations that the charges are politically motivated. Maybe so. We don't know. There's certainly, I think, when you had Representative AOC, okay, she called for the mayor's resignation a couple of days ago. Yeah. So apparently politicians in Washington knew that this was coming. So that raises the question of, is there politics? And people will say yes, and people will say no. What I would like to know, though, is how this investigation started and when and why. Is this something that's truly started in 2017 when he was getting business class upgrades? I doubt it. But the question is, so when did it start, and why did they start this investigation? Those, I think, are legitimate questions that I think any criminal lawyer would want to know.
Yeah. And by the way, did you guys read the indictment?
Yes.
Well, since it's Friday, having read the indictment, Rachel, I think it's appropriate to point out that it's shut the fork up Friday, because Mayor Adams did nothing but run his mouth to law enforcement and say some of the dumbest things that you'll read a defendant say in indictment. Don't talk to law enforcement.
And don't go, once you're indicted, don't go out and don't go make press conferences about this. Don't talk to the media. Don't answer their questions about it. Shut up. Keep your mouth shut. You have a right to remain silent. Americans have fought and died on battlefields across the world to protect that right. So use it. Okay. Don't voluntarily give them any evidence to use against you in a criminal prosecution. That's just my free advice to everybody.
And you know what? It's so hard for people to even follow their own advice. We could give that advice, and in the moment, clearly they become aggressive. So that's what happens, is that when someone feels attacked, which he's been indicted, so he's attacked, they become aggressively defensive. And sometimes that really backfires. Saying less in this case would be more. And I agree. I mean, if you're trying to get, whatever they call it, the straw, what do you call it? Straw voters, straw donations. Yeah. I mean, and then ending up with $10 million in matching campaign funds. I mean, that's ugly. And there's really no explanation for that. I also just want to say, somebody in the comments was talking about AOC. I don't care what AOC says. She can kiss my what. But just want to say that. I
just find it interesting that she apparently knew what the DOJ was doing, before it was publicly announced. So it just raises the question in my mind, what is the reason? Because other mayors, as Doug's pointed out, have done things up there that they may not have been prosecuted for. And so the question is why? And selective prosecution is always a defense,
Right.
Right. Doug,
and distinguish also between, he was fussing about his due process rights and he shouldn't resign and blah, blah. I totally agree that he has due process rights, that he is, presumed to be not guilty. All of that is true. That's different from the question of whether he should continue to serve as mayor. Those are completely different issues.
It would be hard. It would be very hard as the chief executive of the city to do all the things that need to be done on a day in and day out basis. I would imagine, if you're facing this kind of litigation. It's not like if let's say you're a senator, Bob Menendez, somebody like that, who, gets indicted for bribery. He doesn't have to do the kinds of things that a mayor has to do. All he's got to do is show up maybe and vote every now and then. So you could probably get by with not resigning if you're a legislator. But it's going to be very hard, to your point, Doug, I think, to run the city of New York and defend against this kind of case. All right. Well, let's move on to the YSL case. Doug, I know that you don't like to talk about it, and I fully understand you don't talk about things that are coming, but you will talk about, I think, things that have happened. And so, what is the latest? We saw some video, and I've got some additional video that I can play, some other clips, but we've had some movement since Woody was done. And so what's happened in the meantime?
Well, I guess the biggest thing that's happened since Mr. Copeland finished up is we had Quindarius Zachary on the stand, and he had a police interview back in August of 2015 and then again in 2017, where he names a couple of defendants, including my client, as allegedly confessing to the murder of Donovan Thomas to him. But I think as we've really shown in court over both the testimony of Mr. Copeland and now Mr. Zachary, that really this is kind of a fanciful thing that he cooked up along with Garlington and Copeland to shift the blame away from Copeland for the murder of Nutt over to some other people. So but on the big picture, this is yet another witness for the state that has not testified the way that they were hoping. I don't even want to say expecting at this point, but hoping he would testify. They want to put him on the stand, and then eventually they want to play those videotapes of him in the interrogation room back in 2015 and 2017. And by the way, the other thing about this witness, and I think something we're going to get into because it relates to the Nathan Wade issue, is, they arrested him and hauled him into court to testify. And this is a man that is deathly ill with sickle cell. That if you look at the warrant for his arrest as a material witness, I don't even think it really supports that he was being evasive. Of course, I don't have standing to challenge that, but I don't think he was avoiding testifying. There are statements from his family that could make it look that way, but that's his family. And we know a lot of these people, their families can be a bit of a renegade crew.
I got a real quick, it's like a 30-second video I want to play. And then we're going to come back and talk about that. But I'm just going to, everybody who's watching now or on replay, he's not speaking into the microphone. So you're going to have to turn your volume up. And then when we come back, you're probably going to need to turn your volume down. But see if you can turn up your volume and tell me what you think about this here.
You seem a little bit more relaxed today. So
angry today.
You are or are not?
I'm angry today.
Okay. So you're angry, but have you taken the same medicine today?
No, y'all won't let me get it. I'm telling them in pain whole weekend. Y'all got me caged in the house. Y'all done. They got my mama like she locked up. Like can't leave the house. Can't do none of that. Like.
And that makes you angry with the state, right?
I'm going through withdrawals. Yes, I'm angry.
Okay. You said caged in a house.
Yeah, so he's angry, right?
We're all angry.
Well, so he was jailed. Now, Doug, I understand there was an affidavit. I don't know if Miss Love or somebody else filed it, but the DA's office prepared an affidavit to the judge, basically saying that he was subject to arrest because he was evasive with respect to service of a subpoena. So when you contrast all this stuff with the manhunt for Nathan Wade this week and how the DA's office is evasive of open records requests and subpoenas for the production of documents and all this stuff, how can you really jive? I mean, I can't reconcile those two positions where you're saying we got to lock this witness up because he's being evasive with respect to a subpoena, but then they comport themselves and run the office that way.
And Rachel, his being evasive was being stuck in a hospital getting repeated blood transfusions.
You know what? Miss Love's disrespect for people's physical and mental health, I've talked about many times, and I'm very triggered by the way that they treated this individual who clearly needed medication. They didn't want him on medication because they felt that could possibly hurt his testimony. But then he was angry, understandably. I don't know. I'm sure everyone here has been in pain before. I'm pretty irritable when I'm in pain. And so she was acting she was trying to make it seem like he's mad at the state, so he's not going to help them now. But the truth is he was just physically uncomfortable. And then telling him that, he was either going to be jail or basically being caged in his house, playing a lot of games. And she is willing to do that at the expense of people's health. And what was so interesting is she was going, as she always does, she moves at the pace of a sloth. Yes, she does need to be investigated. She should not even have a bar license. But the fact that she purposely was going so slow, understanding that this man's health was at risk and that it could have affected his ability to sit through cross-examination. She was like, she just didn't care. She almost wanted to wear him down to the point where he was so uncomfortable that he couldn't actually engage in a meaningful cross-examination response. I mean, I find her tactics are nothing new to me. I tell you, she spent a week on a competency trial with my client. It should take an afternoon. But what she just tries to, she thinks it's helping. I have to believe that the jurors are, I hear her voice and I cringe and can't handle it, but I have to believe at this point, there's got to be some jurors that are seeing her like, what is she doing? What is she doing? This guy's saying he's in pain. And, you know, I know they ended up, the judge ended up allowing, or telling the cameras that they had to be turned off when they were talking about his health status. But to hear Adrienne Love make proffers about what the doctors for Mr. Zachary were telling her, and the fact that she knew more than his family about his health situation makes me absolutely sick.
Excuse me, and I'm going to say this, Rachel, because I don't think the cameras were running when this happened. But at one point, when we were talking about putting him on the stand and we were concerned about his health, Miss Love pulls out her cell phone in court and starts to call up, I don't know if this was this picked up, Phil? Starts to call up his doctor.
I've heard about it. I don't think I saw it.
Starts to call up his doctor without his approval. And start asking in open court about his health condition.
Yeah. She just, again, the rules, she does not understand rules, and it's because there's no consequences. I mean, I at least like that the judge now will give her a few, you know, say a few things to her. Like, I don't know if that's a good idea. You're not getting what you want out of this witness. You know, she'll kind of say things to her, but somebody needs to hold her accountable. Like, you are violating people's rights constantly, and you don't care. And you don't care because no one has ever you've never experienced consequences for breaking the rules.
Did you see 403 Day, Rachel? Did you see 403 Day on last Monday?
Yeah, you're a hero.
Phil, I'll let you explain that.
Yeah. So we talking about Rule 403,
yeah,
right? Where, you know, now you put me on the spot, but it's.
I'm sorry.
It's an objection that can be made it can be relevant evidence, but if the probative value, which means the weight that it has to prove anything, if that is outweighed by the danger of unfair prejudice, the judge has the discretion to nevertheless exclude it.
It also covers waste of time. So the judge was really inviting this because the judge had attempted to get Miss Love to focus her questioning, and she was refusing to do it, and basically invited me to make 403 objections. So I believe before lunch, someone was counting, the black law student was counting, and I made 23 403 objections before lunch. So between 10 and 12, and 20 were sustained.
Yes.
I've never experienced anything like that in my 25-year career.
I like Rule 403. I like making those objections because every now and then you'll get one that's sustained, but it's for evidence that might otherwise be relevant, but there's other considerations for keeping it out.
But at some point, when 20 of them have been sustained as the judge, I mean, pulling her aside at lunch or taking a sidebar and just explaining that she's going to cut this off. Like, I understand that the state has a right to try their case the way that they want to, but there's parameters, there's boundaries. And the truth is when you have 20 403s sustained, I didn't know that number, but Doug, I mean, chef's kiss. It's a beautiful thing. But at some point, her continuing to elicit and ask questions that create a waste of time or a 403 objection to be sustained, she needs to be there needs to be a full stop. Like you've got.
And I was just saying 403, objection 403 to avoid speaking objections. But I think after about number 15, Miss Love said, I don't understand this 403 objection. And then so I just leaned into the microphone and I said, waste of time.
Yeah.
You are a 403 objection, Adrienne, everything you do. I mean, and I'm just praying, and I have to believe that the jurors who are getting antsy as they sit there and get paid $25 a day. I mean, and yeah, she's stalling. I'm seeing the comments. It becomes obvious the longer that you see her patterns take place. You know, she she thinks she's doing the right thing. Her face is so evil. I'm just like, as just a viewer, I have my own issues with her from before, but just in the way that she's looking, Thugger Daily has done a great job of, she's like plotting on the screen and sitting back and laughing and doing weird stuff. She looks like the person that needs to be prosecuted in that courtroom. I every time I see her and every time I hear her ask questions, just how mean she is in the way that she speaks to people. Zachary's in pain. Okay. Yeah. The guy's in pain. He's physically uncomfortable, and she's kind of making a joke of all of it. And it's disgusting.
Max Short, I believe twice this past week, did actually comment in open court about her laughing.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing we can make there's nothing funny about what's going on in there.
No, but then Adrian she's saying that that the defense is making disparaging comments about her. Yeah, bitch. Yeah. It's hard not to. What do you want? I feel bad, Doug. I feel bad that you have to sit in a room with her all day. There's other attorneys in there. I worry about Bruce Harvey's health. I'm like, do not upset him. Hearing her voice is upsetting enough, but to have her sit around and then complain to the judge that there's disparaging comments made about her, they're all justified, sweetheart.
Well, Doug, there's a question. I know you have to go here in a couple of minutes. Rachel and I will continue in your absence, but before you go, Doug, Mixed Chick asks if you can answer. What are your thoughts on the state wanting to play the phone call of QZ's dad and the detective?
Yeah, I'll tell you what that call was for people that don't know what it was about. It was an investigator from the DA's office and Quindarius Zachary's father kind of getting into it on the phone about Zachary being hauled out of the hospital and brought there to testify. And honestly, I think everyone on that phone call looks bad, which is what the judge said. But certainly the DA's office looks terrible in that call. So does Zachary's father. But why the DA's office? Anyway, I don't know why the DA's office would want to play that. If they want to play it, God bless them. Please play it. Because I think it's wonderful for the jury to get to see how this DA's office operates.
Yeah, behind closed doors, what they're willing to do to try to get somebody to testify. Whereas I'm Zachary's dad, he has reasons, like legitimate safety reasons, among other things, to not want his son to be put in this position. Safety reasons, health reasons. He actually is desperate, probably. And when you're desperate, you say things that are maybe a little bit, unkosher. But what you're trying to do is protect your child. Zach, the son, do they call him Little D? Is that what they call him?
Yeah.
Okay. He is not his father. So also the fact, my dad might say something, I don't necessarily, you can't attribute that to me.
Yeah.
So who cares what his dad said?
And what the disease the man has, it kills Black men in their 30s. So he's sick.
And so the next question here is, why did the state not have to put him in a hotel?
I wasn't privy to those negotiations about where to house him. He may have been more comfortable in his mother's house than in a hotel. I'm not really sure. I know he did request to go to the hotel with the quite pretty investigator in the room.
I love that investigator too. I'm not a huge fan of the office, but I can't think of her name right now. But she's wonderful.
Yes.
And if anyone was going to be escorting me to the hotel, it could be her too. I like her. That's okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, Doug, thank you for your time. I know you have a hard out here. Appreciate you spending some time with us, and we'll see you back next time here inside the law. Thanks so much. Big round of applause, everybody. Say goodbye to our friend Doug, and hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you for having me on, and good to see you all.
All right. Well, good luck this week.
Okay. Yeah, I got to go to Aquavino tonight. So anyone at the fundraiser at the aquarium tonight, stop by.
All right, I'll see you there. It sounds like a fun time. All right. Doug it's so great of him to share some of his time when he's obviously on this giant trial that's taking up so much of his life. I wanted to go back and address some of the super chats that I may have missed. And if I do miss, please accept my apology from the bottom of my heart. I'm trying to get all of them. But this goes back to our other topic with Mayor Adams. Didn't the Adams investigation start after he criticized the Biden-Harris administration? Well, the indictment surely came after that, and he has criticized the administration on certain things. When the investigation started, I don't think anybody knows that. So that's why I was saying I want to know when it started, and I want to know why it started. What put them on the trail of this, these upgrades to business class? And why was that something that got the attention of the federal authorities? I don't know, but thank you very much for the question and for the super chat. Senior Chief is gifting memberships and is thank you very much, Senior Chief, for that. We've talked about Miss Love needing to be investigated. This was a good super chat here. Michael asks, why is it not a due process issue with Love playing musical chairs and not announcing witnesses until the morning of? So that question, you got a couple of questions here, so we'll address that one first. I think strategically, she doesn't want the defense to be able to prepare for what's coming up next. She wants them to kind of be, thrown off a little bit, which is, that's part of, there's an aspect of that that's legitimate trial strategy. But I think the judge has instructed her to basically sort of, give everybody an idea of what's coming up next. Rachel?
I think it's strategically disrespectful to justice to try to not announce the witnesses with the hope that the defense will not be prepared to ask them questions. The goal should be the discovery of truth. And the goal should be trying to give jurors the best opportunity to figure out whether the state has met their burden of proof. So to try and, trick everybody into who they're going to call. And I know she'll stall so that she doesn't have to call another witness that day because she's not ready to do it, or she's worried that possibly the defense is prepared for the witness that day. This is all strategic, but I take issue. While I do believe that there should be some strategy, I don't think that the criminal justice system, especially from a prosecutor's perspective, should be about winning. It should be about presenting the truth to a jury. And so what she's trying to do is confuse people. I mean, she's trying to confuse the jurors. She's trying to keep the and we're talking, this is a very complex case with tons of evidence, tons of like the amount of jail calls that these attorneys are kind of having to sift through to figure out who she's going to call next and whether they're going to be ready. It's kind of despicable with a case this large. It's one thing if you're just trying like a week-long murder case and that there's 15 witnesses and you're going to have to be prepared for all of them. But this is a trial that's taking years. And so for her to just kind of play a lack of transparency, again, these are common themes within their office right now, but I just don't think that that's an ethical way to handle a prosecution of this size.
Well, it should be an honest quest for the truth. And if she doesn't think that her evidence can stand up to a thorough and sifting cross-examination, which the law says these lawyers on the defense are entitled to, then she doesn't need to be putting up that evidence, in my opinion. But anyway, Sue asks, since the question is, since a bar complaint has been filed against Love, what will happen next? So let me start by saying I don't know for a fact that a bar complaint has been filed. Maybe it has, but if it has, bar complaints are ethics complaints. They are filed with the State Bar of Georgia and they are confidential. And oftentimes they don't, if it's meritless on its face or whatever, the bar can choose not to take any action. If they do decide to even look into it, and they don't even always ask the subject of the complaint to even respond. But assuming there is one, it's confidential and we would not know the outcome of it for years and maybe never. But anyway, thank you for the question. Thank you for the super chat. So yeah, I'm not going to try to pronounce your name. I'm sorry, but I'm going to get it wrong. But
it's Christina.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
That's my guess.
Christina. Yeah. All right. So. That's yep. The judge seemed to be adamant that happened, and I think you're right. Yeah. She is.
Yeah. She continues to try to redirect Adrienne Love to the need for organization and professionalism, and Miss Love ignores her. And so, yeah, hopefully to the other.
Yep.
To the other, the amount of times that Adrienne Love objected during like closing arguments, you're not really supposed, this is kind of getting ahead of this, but like, I've had several trials with her. It's very unprofessional unless, again, it's pretty egregious for a prosecutor in the middle of a defense attorney's closing to object.
It's considered very bad taste. It's not, there's nothing unethical about it. And the rules of evidence and the rules of procedure, all the rules apply in a closing argument. But in your closing argument, the lawyer is arguing persuasively. So unless you misstate something that's really egregious, what's considered to be good form and proper etiquette is to not make an objection.
Just prepare yourselves now. Mark my words that she will absolutely be objecting and objecting and objecting more during the closing arguments whenever that ends up happening. Oh yeah, Sprinkle. We can talk about that too. That's interesting.
Yep. So Allie's question, Rachel, is what happened to Sprinkle's testimony? You're the better person.
I don't know what happened.
That one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what happened to it, but I can tell you that when I watched a lot of it, it seemed as though the state was trying to make up for the fact that their investigator, or that the detectives from the Atlanta Police Department didn't keep their notes and kind of did a crappy investigation. And so they were basically saying that Mike Sprinkle, who's been working for the DA's office for as long as I feel like I've been a criminal defense attorney, where he, in doing pre-indictment homicides, ends up doing his own investigation to just kind of bolster this idea that there was enough evidence to support the charges in the indictment. I felt like that's what they were using his testimony for. I'm not sure how effective it was. They were trying. I know that, they were basically trying to say that he does his own investigation in addition to the investigation that's done by APD, with the hopes that the jury will think that if this is not it's not a political prosecution, but a prosecution that's purposeful against young thugs. I think that's kind of been throughout the case. That's been a theme, which is that they wanted to go after him and they were going to go after him. And Mike Sprinkle's talking about how he does this type of investigation in the majority of his cases. I didn't hear anything that really came up that I thought was particularly probative of, actual evidence against any of these guys.
Well, Michael Lawless asks, why did the defense not object to Sprinkle's return after QZ? Odd to get another person on the stand with unfinished, uninterrupted testimony. And you're correct. It is unusual, but the judge has a lot of discretion to take witnesses even out of order, to interrupt testimony if there's some reason to do that. And so I'm not on the defense team. I don't have, other than when Doug comes in here and spends some time with us, we don't, I don't always know what their strategy might be. But if there's no objection from any of these lawyers, and they're all really good lawyers, my guess is, Michael, it was probably something along those lines. There may have been a logistics or something for the convenience of maybe one of the witnesses. But if none of them objected to it, they obviously didn't have a problem with it. But thank you very much for the super chat and for the question.
Real quick, I can add to that I think that because Zachary was sick and they had him jailed at Rice Street, and then at some point he had to go back to Grady, I think that the state and the defense both had an interest in, the state would have been happy to probably keep him in jail and let him, disintegrate there. But the defendants were, and for the sake of Zachary's health, were kind of like, to keep him waiting in a queue so that you can get Sprinkle up here to bolster the idea that you had a decent investigation. We'd rather stop this and when Zachary's, get him out of jail and let him do this before it gets out of control.
Here's another quick video. I had this one ready. And this is another one where I want you to turn your volume up and then turn it back down when we come back after this quick video, because this is, just watch.
I need some drugs. Narcotic. Like, I got chronic care issues, you know that. She keep asking the same questions.
It was really hard. He's talking about he needs drugs, right? And by, I think by that he means, you know, pertaining to his, you know, his health condition and all that. So we've got all this stuff taking place in front of the jury, Rachel. So when they see that, and oh, here's another one where he says he was on drugs a previous day.
Do you remember substantially less today than you did on Friday since the weekend?
Friday, I was probably on like 5 Percocet, 10 milligrams of morphine. I don't remember nothing.
Do you remember or do you know what your doctor said about your ability to testify despite what medicine you're on?
Close for hearsay.
I'm asking, do you know?
He probably ain't never took no drugs.
Okay. So that's not answering the question. Do you know what your doctor said about your ability to testify despite what drugs you were on?
No.
Were you not present when your doctor said that?
Yes, I think.
Okay. Where were you when you heard him say that?
I don't remember now.
Do you not remember sitting in that chair right there?
I remember him being on the screen.
Okay.
Y'all ain't supposed to have him on no screen.
What now?
Y'all had me high. Y'all just tricked me up doing anything.
Say that for me again.
Y'all ain't even supposed to have him on no TV screen.
What?
I don't, cause I put my business, my medical business all over the world and something, man.
Okay.
I was high. I was on medicine, full of medicine. The lawyer was back there arguing with me. I don't remember nothing.
So he's talking about so when what I was getting at, what I wanted to discuss with you is when the jury sees all this, right? What do you think the jury makes of it in terms of like reasonable doubt and whether or not they're going to give this witness any credibility? We've seen instances before where people have come in, you know, voluntarily intoxicated and been allowed to testify with Judge Glanville, right? But so what does this do in terms of creation of reasonable doubt in your mind?
Well, I mean, I think if anyone's ever had a health issue, okay, so jurors are people. Jurors are mostly not lawyers. I don't think there's any lawyers on this jury. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, Zachary is explaining that, and I know that's his last name. I'm just calling Quindarius as I think his first name, but he's explaining the embarrassment of having his personal business just put out there and having his doctor on the screen talking about the kind of medications he takes. These are the kind of things that you really don't have the right, and that's not information that should be public. Also, just he's taking Percocet, he's been on morphine, he's got a lot of other things going on, and she's asking him to remember what happened, you know, 4 days ago. I think it creates reasonable doubt and a lot of frustration with the state for kind of putting up a witness under these conditions and kind of demanding these things of him. And after he says, I don't remember, to kind of keep prying and trying to make him feel bad for not remembering. It's like, but when he says he needs drugs, it's like, I mean, if I had to sit in that courtroom all day, I'd need drugs too. And I don't have sickle cell, but geez, I mean, just having to interact with her in any amount is exhausting. But again, I mean, yeah, when you're on medication, you don't really know what's going on, and he's trying to cooperate so he doesn't have to sit in Rice Street. But he also explained very clearly the reasons why he had initially said that certain individuals that are on trial did things, and it was because he had a vendetta against them, and he was trying to get out of his own mess where he was facing like 180 something years in prison. So he had a lot of reasons to lie. And
well, I think that, look, my prediction here, and we apparently have a lot of trial left, but my prediction here is the jury, you know, they got to be unanimous to convict anybody. I think that there's going to be one or probably more, if not all of them, that are going to be so confused. They're like, look, we can't make heads or tails of this, and we're just not going to be able to convict anybody based on all this, you know, kind of really bizarre, trial tactics and testimony. I just don't know how a jury is supposed to sort it all out. But anyway, that's just my opinion. I welcome yours. And of course, those of you in the comments, this is a free speech zone. We want you to feel free to comment. And I'll go back and I will look at the comments in this live chat that I've missed. And I will also look at the comments people post on the video after it's no longer live. And I know Rachel does from time to time too. So you can always reach us there. Rachel, we're going to leave it there. I appreciate your time. I know you're traveling today, but I'm glad you avoided the weather in the metro Atlanta area. But in any event, enjoy the rest of your travels, my friend.
Well, thank you all for listening. And yeah, if you have any more questions, ask us in the comments. And Phil, it's always great to see you. And I love your Bucky shirt.
I know, that's my Bucky shirt. I was trying to decide what kind of mood I was in today. And I'm like, well, it's a Bucky's kind of day. Why not? All right. Well, every big round of applause. Give a hand for our friend Rachel Kaufman, and safe travels, my friend. All right. So there you have it, folks. Listen, this chat, I've been watching a lot of this is one of the best chats that you're going to find anywhere on LawTube. I'm convinced of that. I love the chat. And I like going back and looking at these comments after the fact. But, look, we have other things that we're going to be talking about. I didn't try to get into the Diddy indictment today. That's something that, that's going to require a lot of work and a lot of we've got that, and we got the Koberger case. We have a lot of other things that don't involve the Fulton County DA's office that we're going to be able to get into. And I'm just trying to plot out how the best way is to approach those things, because what I want to do is use these cases that are in the news to try to help, let's try to learn something, try to learn how the real justice system operates. But thank you all for your support. And look, if you can just do one thing for me, please don't be this guy.
Man, can I get a water or something? I'm so high right now, y'all. I'm about to go to sleep on y'all ass. I ain't gonna tell you no lie.
Yes, you may. We're gonna take a break. Hang in there.
And if you couldn't tell from that the young thug YSL trial was going to become an absolute dumpster fire, well, look, when it starts out that way with a high intoxicated witness and one of the state's primary witnesses, this is the evidence that they're wanting this jury to consider. Well, you had to know the YSL trial was going to be a disaster. And I'm going to leave it there. And with that, thank you all very much. And I will see you next time here inside the law.